Hello, everyone. My name is, yes, Matthew Kim, as Miss Lee nicely introduced me for. I am right now teaching at an American public high school called Sauk Prairie High School. I'm a social studies teacher there. I teach history and economics right now. I'll be teaching also later this year. I'll be teaching consumer econ, which is a little bit more focused on like a um, how to manage your finance as a consumer, how as a well-educated consumer. So for this series of lessons that I prepared for you guys, today we will talk about GDP because I'm sure you've heard of GDP a lot. Yes, please turn on the CC if you need to. Um, so GDP a lot. And many times, most of you might know GDP is like if is high, that's something good. GDP is low, that's bad, But let's actually dive in a little bit more, What is GDP really? What makes up GDP? Why is GDP important? Was not counted in GDP, and some downside of GDP as well. So that's what we're going to cover today. But when we come back next week, no, the week after next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll cover something that my class personally loves the most. So in my econ class, whenever I teach my students about this, they absolutely love this lesson because there is a video game that comes with it, and if time allows, we should be able to play that video game too. And the topic alone is very, very interesting. It is about investment. Who wants to make money? Everyone wants to make money. But if there are more than just one single way to make money, or maybe there's more than just stocks, there's more safer ways to make money. And what are they? Like, what are those? So we will look at that in the week two. And for the third one, we will talk about inflation. And also, we will talk about what we call central bank, maybe in Chinese, 中央银行, right? And why central bank is so important in our economy. Okay. So I hope the series of lessons, you can join all of them. And before we start, I want to also extend special thanks to Miss Lee, who always invites me to join you guys and share the knowledge that I have and share the lessons that I lead in America. And also, I want to extend further gratitude to my former colleague, Yuting Lo. She was amazing teacher for us, and she is greatly missed in our school community. We still talk about all the stuff that she put out there for us, and all the great role model that she was for all our students. So thank you, Yuting, once again for keeping in touch with us and giving me another, opportunity, helping informing this opportunity. So, all right, without no further ado, let's get started. Okay. Now, let me share my slide. All right. So for this one, I do have some Chinese text as well. So I suggest, since this is uh, also for you to practice English, I want you to also try to read English caption as much as possible. But for the most important things I need you to know, I put it in Chinese as well. I ran it based on ChatGPT. It may not be perfect, but I'm sure it'll be better to have it. Now, let's get started. So, first thing first, let's imagine that you're a doctor, um, and 医生, right? You're a doctor, and a patient comes in for annual physical. Like that means like every year you get this physical checkup. How many tests do you think doctors should run? Like I'll have my, by the way, I'll have my chat on so that if you have any question or if I ask you a question, you can also answer through there. So I'll give you option. Um, Option one, maybe 3 tests is enough. Option two, maybe 5 tests is enough. Option three, more than 5. What do you think? You can just type your maybe answer on the chat. So number one, 3 is enough. Number two, 5 tests are enough. And number three, more than 5. Okay. More than 5. 3 is enough. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, when I went to, as you guys already know, I'm a Korean American. My ethnicity is Korean, but I grew up here, so I kind of see myself both Korean and American. But when I went to Korea, I had a chance to do this annual checkup as well, and it took me entire day of running from my basic checkup to like blood and everything. So I personally think like more than 5 would be a pretty solid answer. How about number two? If patient says they're eating 1800 calorie per day, what other question would you ask them to know if they are eating well? You don't have to answer this, but just to kind of share some ideas, um, some of my students would say, like, how are you eating the 1800 calories, right? Like they're eating 1800 calories with by fan and like some shangcai might be okay. But 1800 calories just with shu tiao and hanbao is like just very, very bad, right? So we have to know like if okay, eight same number, but what kind of how do you get that number? Like how do you get that calorie is also very important, right? And lastly, how do you know if Taiwanese economy is healthy? You know, there are many different ways to see this, right? Of course, since this lesson is GDP, yes, GDP will be one way, but the other ways include unemployment rate, right? If unemployment is high, then that's a bad sign, right? And also maybe stocks, Taiwanese stock prices. If overall Taiwanese stock prices are doing bad, that means companies are not performing well or there's some national crisis going on, right? Um, and I didn't see the stock of the Taiwan that much, but I'm sure whenever there's a huge Chinese provocation to the border of Taiwan, I'm sure stocks kind of go down and then go back up again. So a lot of these indicators are how we assess how well economy is doing. Now, so the basic idea is that we need measurements. In order for us to understand without a way to measure, we have trouble discussing or comparing a situation, right? Now, measurements help us understand and quantify, like we can count complex subjects. So for doctors, they measure more than just one thing to understand our health situation, right? They ask about blood, like they take our blood. They ask about our diet habit. They kind of take a look at our throat. They even like take our urine samples, right? And they take the blood pressure. So a lot of different measurements to really understand as a whole how we're doing. So you see, GDP is an economic measurement. And ever since GDP, the term GDP got much more popular. Um, oh, okay. uh, countries became more strategic in developing their economies. Okay, so this is a very interesting chart showing you that the red line is when the word economy began to appear in the book, and the blue line shows when the name GDP got invented. So the term GDP got invented a little after than economy, but then starting from 1940, both GDP and economy, now that those two words became popular, we could see, at least in America, that national income and the whole economical situation got so much better. Why? Because now we have measurement. We can measure what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, then how we can improve what we're not doing well while maintaining the good status, right? So really measurement is very, very important in economics, and GDP is one of many measurements that we use. So GDP it stands for gross domestic product. Okay. Um, I'm not I don't know Chinese that well, but in Korean it's something like 국내 생산 총량 or something 수량. 국내 생산 수량. I'm sure it's kind of similar in Mandarin as well. So as you can tell by the name by itself, right? Um, the definition of GDP, gross domestic product, is the market value of all newly finished goods and services produced within a country in a year. Notice what I underline. Market value. I underline market value, right? 시장 가격, maybe. And newly finished goods within a country and in a year. These four are very, very important, and we will actually take a look at each one of them. All right. So the first idea is only finished goods are counted into GDP. Okay. So we have something called intermediate goods. Now, these intermediate goods are not counted in GDP. Now, I'll tell you what that means with the picture very soon. So intermediate goods are a good. By the way, when I say good, it's not good. It's actually, when we use good in noun, it actually means 东西, right? Did I say it right, Shirley?
Yes.
东西 is a
Yes.
good, right? Okay, so a good is 东西 that is used to make another good that will be sold as a part of the finished good. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's take a look at here. So when so let's say we are buying eggs from grocery stores, okay? So eggs purchased by consumers like us at the supermarket are counted towards GDP. Why? Because the eggs that we buy are the finished goods. We are going to consume that. We are going to use that for our food, right? We're not going to use this egg again to make something else and sell it. Does that make sense? So when we buy eggs, those things are counted towards GDP. However, when bakers, right? Let's say a baker is trying to make a cake. It's been a while since I studied Mandarin. Maybe 蛋糕, is that right?
Exactly.
But perfect. So when eggs are purchased by baker, now those eggs are not counted because the baker's eggs are used to make a cake. So the cake will be the finished product, and egg is just inside the cake, right? So it is only the cake that's going to be counted, not the eggs. So depending on who buys eggs and how that person uses that egg, uh, will help us determine whether or not it is going to be part of GDP or not. Okay. So one of my students in America asked me this question. Oh, well then, Mr. Kim, how does a government or how does a country know when bakers purchase eggs and when regular consumers purchase eggs? How do they track this? And I told him that is a very good question. And I think some of you might be wondering that too. So that is to give you a short answer, this is why we have kind of store for vendors. Like vendors are merchants. So a lot of times bakers or other people, they have their own like a grocery store where they sell in a huge quantity. They buy things in huge quantity so that they can use them. So it's usually discounted price and things like that. So we have a whole grocery vendor for all these merchants and the chefs and the bakers and whatnot. On the other hand, we also have we have consumers grocery stores like, Carrefour. I remember Carrefour is still very big in Taiwan. Like 7-Eleven, all those places that where we buy eggs there are usually counted towards GDP. So that's how government tracks like which eggs are bought by the baker, which eggs are bought by consumers. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, here's then quick question. Ooh, then how about baker's oven? All right. I did say only finished goods are counted in GDP. Now, well, before I show you the answer, do you think baker's oven should be counted towards GDP? Because remember, we said that baker's oven is used to make cake, right? So I said just like eggs, baker's oven is used to make the cake. Then I want to know how you guys think. Do you think baker's oven will be counted in GDP or not counted in GDP? Why don't you write your answers on the chat? Yes or no? I see 2 no's so far. Yes. Okay. Okay. Kind of like half of you saying yes, half of you saying no. Now, to tell you the answer, the baker's oven is used to make another finished good, but again, it is not a part of the finished good, right? So, because for eggs, technically, let's see, 我们吃蛋糕的时候，我们也吃鸡蛋，对不对？ Right? We are technically eating eggs, but when it comes to oven, we're not eating oven. So that means that even though oven is used to make the cake, we are not actually consuming cake. Oven is not part of the cake. So when it comes to baker's oven, we actually call that capital good. And for capital goods are actually finished products. So capital goods are counted towards GDP. Okay? And I think when we talk about different components of GDP later on, I'm sure you should be able to understand, oh, this is why baker's oven is counted towards GDP. But just remember, just because something is used as a part of to make the finished product, that doesn't mean everything will be counted GDP, nor everything will not be counted. You have to really look at it very clearly. So really the 2 questions you have to ask is, are you using that are you using that to make the finished product? If answer is no, then that is counted towards GDP. But if the answer is yes, then you have to go like, okay, second question is that product that you use to make finished product part of that finished product? If the answer is yes, then you can say, oh, then it's not counted in GDP. But if the answer is no, then you can say, oh, then that's a capital good, and capital good should be counted in GDP. Okay? Now, so how about this? Do you think this would be counted towards Taiwanese GDP? Buying a used sweater from a thrift store. Yes or no? Okay. M saying no. Dong something says no as well. Orikoko says yes. YC says no. For this one, the answer is no. It was already sold once before, so it's already counted towards GDP when it was first made. But Orikoko, if that's what you meant to say yes, then sure. But we're talking about buying used sweater from the thrift store. So used goods are not counted in GDP. How about this? Buying some avocados from Mexico. Do you think this would be counted towards Taiwanese GDP? I see yes. I see no. 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 Well, to give you the answer, the question is it going to be counted towards Taiwanese GDP, right? So technically, no, it would be counted Mexico's GDP, not in Taiwan's GDP. All right. So, which one out of these three situations then, can you tell me which number would be included in Taiwanese GDP? So, you sweep the road in front of your family's house. 2, you pay the neighbor's kid in cash to sweep. And 3, you hire a cleaning company to sweep. Which one do you think would be counted towards GDP? Taiwanese GDP. Yes, you guys are following really well. So it is definitely number 3. Why? Because this is the only one with the market value. All right. The option number 1 is a household production, and number 2 is a non-market informal market. So therefore, it is number 3. And we have to actually, so let's go back to our earlier slide. So I said it has to be made in the market value, right? When I say market value, it means market price. So something like this. Maybe you picking up your friend at Jichang airport may not be counted in GDP. Even if your friend says thank you and give you some money, that's not going to be counted in GDP because that's what we call informal market. Okay. However, if your friend takes Uber from Jichang to go home, now that Uber service is market price, right? It has all the market price to it. So that will be counted towards GDP. Now, we also talk about buying used stuff from like a thrift store. It's not counted, right? Because GDP has only counts newly finished product or services in that year. Okay? So buying used one will not be counted in GDP. Another thing, we talk about Mexico. So buying avocados in Mexico will contribute to GDP in Mexico, but not in our Taiwanese GDP. Why? Because GDP literally is the gross domestic product. So 국내 생산 수량, right? Meaning that whatever is produced within this country. Okay. Now, so how about we actually, I'm sure you kind of get it already, but how about we play a quick game to solidify our understanding? Okay. So how about we play a quick Kahoot over here. So, oh, not this one. Host live. Oh my gosh, I didn't log in. Okay. 等我一下。All right, so I want to get rid of. Oh gosh. All right, star classic mode. All right, so this is 9135. I'll share it on the chat as well. Oh, actually, here you go. Sorry about that. Perfect. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for coming in. Oh, welcome. Let's make it a little bit more interesting. I don't know. Miami? Oh, yeah. Perfect. I know that we have about 40 people in this lesson, so maybe I'll start maybe when we have about 20 people coming in. Okay, and you can always join in the middle of the game. That's not a problem. Oh, I like this Miami vibe. All right. Okay. Well, for the sake of time, I think we should be able to start just fine. So okay. Ooh is coming here. Interesting names. All right. So we'll start, but again, you can come in the middle of the game. That is totally fine too. Okay. All right. I'm not gonna lock it. Okay. All right. 20. All right. Let's start. So what you gotta do is decide whether that will be included in Taiwanese GDP or not. Okay. Ooh, double points already. Now, if Mr. Kim gets paid for today's online class by your school later, will that be counted in GDP or not? Think about it. Where am I providing this service? The answer is no, because the question is it included in Taiwanese GDP, right? So technically, since I'm in 美国, right? So I'm producing this service in Taiwan, in America. So what I'm basically doing is exporting my service to you guys. So my service, therefore, will be counted towards Taiwanese, not towards American GDP, not Taiwanese. I must have mixed up the question order, so I think this is supposed to be the last question, but let's move on. Is this including GDP? Government spending. Your parents received a pension pay from the government. Ooh, I'm surprised. Oh, yes, actually the answer is no. Now, you see, when government just pays your parents for a pension pay, that is just transfer of money. Now, if your parents actually use that money to buy something new, now that will be counted in GDP. But what government just did is giving the money to your parents. Now, that part has nothing to do with the actual production, right? So therefore, it's not going to be counted in GDP. Let's move on to the next one. Gaming console. Your friend bought a PS5 at your local Garafu, but PS5 was made in Japan. Will this be in Taiwan GDP? The answer is no. Why? Because yes, you bought this at your local store, but PS5 was made in Japan. So basically, you are buying what's imported to your country. And we'll learn about this later too, but import actually is negatively counted in GDP. So PS5 will be actually counted towards Japanese GDP, not Taiwan. Even though it is Taiwanese people that bought this, but it's not going to be counted in Taiwanese GDP. Now, camp. So you pay 8,000 Taiwanese dollar for a 1-week adventure camp in Hualien. Most of you said yes, so I don't think I need to explain. Yes, it is going to be counted in GDP. Why? All the things that you'll buy there, like hotel stuff, services, everything is domestically made in Taiwan for that year, right? New stuff. So yes. Oh, Melody, all right, climbing up, climbing up. Now, government purchase. Taichung local government decides to hire a company to make a new bridge. Now, will this be counted in GDP? Yes, this time it is going to. Why? Because this, unlike last time with the pension, this time government is actually hiring and purchasing the service of a company to build a bridge, right? So even government, what government buys can be counted in GDP as long as that is a final product or final service made in Taiwan for that year. Okay. Nice. Lynn climbing up. All right. How about Netflix? You bought a subscription to Netflix this year. I'll ask the same question. Netflix 在哪里？什么国家的公司？公司I'm not sure if that's the correct way of saying. But which country's company is it? It is America. So that's why it's not going to be counted. So even if Netflix, even if you subscribe to Netflix right now, that will help American GDP, not Taiwanese GDP. All right. Haircut. You cut your dad's hair this month, and he paid you. It's not going to be. Why? Because it has to be a formal market, right? It has to be all market priced. So you giving your dad a haircut and your dad giving you money is an informal market. So it is not going to be counted in GDP. All right. Emily and 2434. All right. Doing great. And just Melody keeping on top. So candle. Your friend bought a Taiwanese made candle at Daiso this year. Yes. So hands down, it is yes, right? Because it is made in Taiwan this year, and you bought it, right? All right, Lynn. All right. Oh, Emily's face looks so sad. All right. We have just 3 more questions. Uber. Your mom took an Uber. Does it be counted in GDP or not? It is going, surprisingly, it is going to be. It is going to be. Here's the thing. Think about who's providing service to you. And who's actually making money out of it. Yes, I think most of you said no because Uber is, I think, German company. But at the end of the day, Uber, but it is going to be the Taiwanese people, right? That's driving and that's making money, right? So we have to think in both ways. So when we say Netflix, it's not going to be counted in Taiwan GDP because Netflix is in America, and it is that Netflix streaming from America to you guys. Of course, there is Taiwan Netflix as well, but it is still American, so they will make money. But for Uber, right, the Uber driver is not American or not German. It is going to be Taiwanese people. And they will actually get paid, and actually they're getting paid with the market price. These Uber drivers are Taiwanese people. The service is in Taiwan, and it is finished service. So therefore, surprisingly, Uber is going to be counted in Taiwan GDP. Okay. Yeah, now just 3 more. Your little sister joined Instagram this year. Will this be in GDP or not? No, right? Well, first of all, because Instagram is free service, and we'll talk about that very soon too. But the second thing is Instagram is American company, also service from America, right? Like there's not much Taiwanese people that actually make money out of Instagram anyway, right? If they do, it's gonna be Americans in United States, right? All right, Melody doing great. Lynn also doing good. 22 is the highest climber. Nice. Just 2 more. All right, a poster. A Canadian person buys a Taiwan-made art poster. Will this be counted in Taiwanese GDP or not? Yes, this will be. Because now this will be considered export, right? Taiwan is exporting this poster to this guy in Canada, right? So it is made in Taiwan this year. It's a newly finished product, market price. So it is going to be counted towards Taiwanese GDP. Ooh, CC, okay. All right, last question. House. Your parents sold your child home this year. You live in Taiwan. Given that you live in Taiwan and your parents sold your child home this year, is that going to be counted in GDP? Almost there. Surprise! This is not going to be counted, right? Most of you said yes, but it is no. But think about it. It is your child home that your parents sold. So is this house a new good or used good? Right? It's a used good. It's not a new house. So if it is a new house that's just built and you buy that house, that is going to be counted in GDP. However, if it is a used house, that is not going to be counted in GDP. So I'm sure you guys heard about like China having such a high GDP because they build so much houses, right? And a lot of economists are saying this GDP that China has, high GDP China has, is a bubble. This is actually fake because Chinese economy is not good enough to make all the Chinese people to live in all these new built houses. That's why after all this housing boom in China ended, their GDP actually dropped because they're no longer buying. They're no longer making new houses. There are not many people buying new houses, and all these houses are left abandoned and becoming ghost towns even. So this is the reason that when it comes to house, that just because more they are built, Chinese government is building more houses and therefore their GDP is doing well, that doesn't mean that good GDP will stay forever. And that's why they are experiencing a huge decline right now. So I hope that makes sense with the house. why your parents selling your house, child home is not going to be counted. Does that make sense? Now, all right, perfect. Thank you. A lot of thumbs up. All right. So now that we're done with this, well, let's take a look. For the sake of it, Lynn, congratulations. 恭喜恭喜. Oh, Melody, I thought you were going to be the second. First. You're second. Oh, okay. 24. Oh, 恭喜恭喜. Okay. Alright, now let's actually go back to our lesson. Alright, fair enough. Alright, so we just practiced this. Very nicely done, everyone. Now, so when we played this Kahoot, we actually saw different types of like situation, right? Where sometimes depending on how government spends money, it can be counted towards GDP, it cannot be. Depending on whether it's export or import, that can be either positively or negatively impacting GDP. So there are components that make up the entire GDP. And there are different ways to see this, but the most common way to see GDP is by taking the expenditure method. So how do we measure GDP? Well, it kind of looks like this. So consumption spending is what we, the consumers, spend. So all the stuff that we buy in the grocery stores and all that. So what has to do with consumers, that's consumption spending. Now, investment spending is something done by companies, right? So when companies are buying new buildings, when companies are buying new computers for their office, that is investment spending. And actually, do you guys remember the baker example? Baker buying the stone oven. Now, that is part of investment spending. So that's why the baker is using the oven, but oven is not part of the finished product, so it is investment spending. Now, the third item is government spending. Now, I'm not sure if some of you noticed, but when I said about the parents' pension, the 养老金, whatever, I said government transfer. I described that as government transfer. When I say government transfer, that is government transferring money to your parents. Now, that didn't count in GDP as we saw in the game. But for government, when government hires a landscape company, when government hires a construction company to build something, now they are actually paying that money to make some sort of a finished product or to receive some finished service. Now, that kind of government spending is going to be counted in GDP. And lastly, we have net export. Now, net export is simply saying export minus import. So this is why if a country exports a lot more than what they're importing, the GDP is going to go up. That makes sense, right? However, when a country imports a lot more than what they're exporting, their GDP will go down because they're relying more on the foreign country's production, not your domestic production. Okay? So these four are the big components that make up the GDP. Now, we have about 8 minutes, and I'm sure we should be able to talk about this. So another thing we saw in the game is about Instagram. And most of you actually said Instagram is not counted in GDP. But think about it. Oh, why am I showing hand? Sorry about that. Like, I'm sure most of you use Instagram, right? And I'm sure even before this class, I'm sure most of you check on your Instagram or Facebook. So we know that Instagram is widely used. However, it's not counted in GDP because it's free service, right? And that has to do and that is a little hint of what the limitation of GDP is. So this is an article that I want you guys to read. It's okay to read in Chinese, but I'll read it out in English. Okay. So consider Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia. Britannica used to cost several $1,000s, meaning its customers considered to be worth at least that amount. They thought it is worth paying several $1,000s to buy this collection of the encyclopedia. Wikipedia, a free service, has far more articles at a very comparable quality than Britannica ever did. Measured by consumer spending, the industry is shrinking, meaning the print encyclopedia, in fact, went out of business in 2012 as consumers choose to just abandon it and just use Wikipedia. But measured by the benefits, consumers have never been better off. Like just because we stopped buying printed encyclopedia, that didn't mean that our livelihood got so much worse. In fact, it got better, didn't it? So our research found that median value, so average value that US consumers place on Wikipedia is about $100 a year. But the cost is zero. That translates. So that means most American people in average are willing to pay $150 a year. And let's imagine that Wikipedia turns into a profitable company. And they decided to charge $150 a year to use their service. Now, if they actually do that, then they could have made $42 billion, right? They could, if we calculate 150 times, all the people willing to use in America, that can be valued at $42 billion. However, because they choose to go $0 free service, $42 billion of profit is not reflected in US GDP, right? That possible money, that possible production is now wasted. So so based on this, let's discuss this really quick. Is Wikipedia counted in US GDP? Why, or yes or no? No. Thank you. Yes. No. 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 Actually, it's no, right? Because it's free to use, right? And when consumers switch from buying encyclopedias to using Wikipedia, what will happen to US GDP? Will US GDP go up or down? Once again, when consumers switch from buying paper encyclopedias to using this free service Wikipedia, what will happen to US GDP? Will it go up or down? I see 1 down, 2 up, 3 up, 2 downs, down, up. Now, let me ask you again. No difference. So I think I know what you mean when you say no difference, because for consumers, we're not actually losing anything. But let's just look at US GDP, right? Because it's free, it's not counted in GDP. So people used to pay to buy encyclopedia, and whatever they paid to buy, it used to count towards GDP. But now that nobody is using encyclopedia, nobody is paying encyclopedia, now that they switched to Wikipedia, if people stop buying encyclopedias and use free Wikipedia, GDP goes down, right? GDP goes down. Then the question is this change in GDP accurately measuring the well-being of U.S. economy? No, right? Because well-being wise, we are actually Americans, everybody is doing so much better, right? We can have access to encyclopedia more easily. Even poor people can use it. It's not just something that rich people can buy. So our life got much better. However, GDP wise, it went down. Why? Because people used to buy encyclopedia. That goes into consumption. However, now that people are using free service, which is not counted in GDP, just in GDP itself, it went down. So that's where the downside of GDP comes from, right? So ultimately, we're trying to measure economic value and activity, and we are using GDP as a tool. Unfortunately, if we only count goods or services with a price tag, we will miss a lot of economic activity and value. In the encyclopedia example, GDP is actually erroneously decreasing as users are switching from encyclopedia to Wikipedia. This can be actually used in a lot of examples. How about all the photo book and photo album businesses, right? We used to buy those photo albums. I'm sure if you go to your 99's house, they got big photo albums, right? And you have to buy that to keep the photos. But now you don't have to buy that. You can just post it on Instagram. So we are doing exactly the same thing, but GDP-wise, it went down. Why? Because you're no longer buying it. You're just using free service, right? Then is GDP going down accurately representing our economy? Not quite. And the bigger application of this is as we're going more into the digital world, economists are considering that they might need to come up with a new way of measuring economy other than GDP, because more and more finished services are free to use. I think I ended a time at the perfect with the perfect timing. Does anybody have questions about what I've shared with you? Anything like that? If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email on this email address. And thank you very much for your time. And I will give the mic to Ms. Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew Kim, for such a wonderful classes, which clarify our misconceptions about the so-called GDP. Even if we know the concept, I still need to consider many factors which influence whether it is GDP or not. So I think there was a very good game for us to think about that. I like Kahoot a lot. Yes. Oh, someone said that this class is great and practical. Yeah. And as long as you just fill in the feedback form, I will just give you the link of the video soon after our 3 online classes. And I will also show this video to my classes while we are in classes, because we are having a project. This is called the International Communication and the Education Courses. 好，那大家的话就是这有录影，我们都会在之后的话会回放，然后呢就是会寄给我们有填回馈表的老师，所以呢送给老师最好的礼物就是要填回馈表哦。好， 那大家先慢慢填一下，而且你填了之后马上就可以得到我们台中家商发的研习证书，这样子。那我刚刚努力的截图，所以也送给大家相簿。Hi King.
Excuse me. Hey, speaking of practical, actually our next lesson is going to be even more practical and even more life applicating, because we are going to learn different ways of investment that you can even start doing it even right now. And the younger that you are, the more chance you can actually make a lot more money. Here, the things that I'm about to share with you are not some sort of a lie. I'm not trying to get you buy some certain stock, but I'm just trying to introduce you that there are different ways of investing your money, and it is always better to just to let your money work on its own rather than keeping it in the bank account. So we will actually talk about that next time we come back, and I'm sure this is going to be. I hope that that lesson will be also your favorite lesson, because it is one of the most favorite lessons, even in my school too. So stay tuned for practicality. Sorry.
Yes, I heard that classes last year. I was so impressed. It was awesome. So everyone, if possible, you can just invite your students over on Sunday morning with just 1 hour. I think it will just brighten your, broaden your horizons. And if possible, we know that King has been to Taiwan for a while. So can I ask you again to share a Taiwanese song to us?
Not this time.
Not this time. Okay.
As you can see, I'm actually engaged, and I have to be very careful. My fiance is next to me, so she's like, "No more songs," and I'm like, "Yup, whatever you say, I listen." So, but maybe one day when I go to Taiwan and visit you guys, maybe I can play 1 or 2 songs there. But this time, not this time. Come on.
Okay. Yeah. So let's stay tuned. If possible, we can listen to his voice next time in person. Yes. Congratulations on getting engaged and finding your beloved one. Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any more questions? Okay, sorry. If possible, can you just show your faces together? We can have a good photo. It will also be put in our album. 大家如果愿意的话，可以帮我开个镜头吗？好，如果还在床上的话，就可以，你知道，戴个口罩这样子。It's 11 o'clock on Sunday morning in Taiwan, and it's roughly 10 o'clock in the evening in America.
9
o'clock. 好，大家都很害羞，那我们等一下哦。好，谢谢资科的同学能够在礼拜天能够上线，只要露一下就好了。那我觉得可以放在你们的 Learning Portfolio 也非常开心。谢谢嘉文老师。好，没关系，我们顺其自然。好的。And thank you all for joining our online commerce seminar. I think this is equal to the bilingual education that our government just wants us to do. Use English to teach students some professional knowledge, the content knowledge. 所以以后的话 in the future when you go to America, this is the way that we are having the classes. So students should try hard to understand the core concept. And Kim is so nice. He uses both Mandarin and English in the slide. That was good. 谢谢松汉老师。好，我已经截图了。好，那我们的话呢，再等大家3分钟，我们就可以休息喽。那谢谢 我们会在下礼拜再相见，因为下礼拜的话是我们学校段考前，然后大家休息一下，等到段考后我们再上课。Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for spending this hour for wonderful classes.